You ever watched a man die slowly, while smiling? He's the guy holding the grocery bags, fixing the Wi-Fi, nodding through arguments, and sitting quietly across from a woman who used to moan his name, and now barely whispers it. He doesn't even realize he's fading. He thinks he's being mature, being patient, being the version of himself she asked for. He believes he's showing love. But what he's really doing is disappearing. One apology at a time. One "it's okay" at a time. One forced smile at a time. And the wildest part, he signed up for it. He volunteered for his own erasure. Let me ask you a question. A real one. The kind of question most men are too afraid to say out loud. Why is it that women rarely want what they say they want? Why do they ask for sensitivity, but seem drawn to the guy who treats them like a time slot? Why do they preach about partnership, but crave the man who leads? Why do they say, "I want a nice guy," and then vanish on the one who actually listens? Schopenhauer called this a biological paradox. I call it a quiet crucifixion, because men are being nailed to expectations that were never real to begin with. Here's the twist of the knife. She's not lying. She's not evil. She's not manipulating you. She just doesn't actually know what she wants. Because what she says she wants comes from the lips of her culture, her upbringing, her friends, the endless feed of relationship advice. But what she responds to comes from something much older, something raw and primal. It comes from her nature. And nature doesn't apologize. Nature doesn't care how many times you text "good morning." Nature doesn't reward the guy who was there for her cat's funeral or who canceled his dream to help build hers. Nature isn't sentimental. She was built by nature to desire what survives, not what submits. And here's where a lot of guys get crushed. You think your loyalty, your flowers, your deep emotional vulnerability, you think those things can override 3 million years of evolutionary programming. Let me hit you with something that might either free you or wreck you, depending on how tightly you're holding on to the illusion. She doesn't want your love. She wants your gravity. She wants to fall into something she can't control, but desperately needs. And if you become too predictable, too soft, too available, too accommodating, she won't hate you. She just dry up. That's not me being cynical. It's Schopenhauer writing straight from the chest. With women, love is and remains a matter of the will of nature, not of personal feeling. Let that settle in. It means her biology doesn't care how good you've been. Attraction isn't a merit badge. Nature doesn't filter out weak men with violence. It does it with silence. With disinterest, with the quiet withdrawal of that spark in her eyes, you'll feel it, but won't know what you did wrong. And what do most men do when that spark fades? They try harder. They show up more. They become more attentive, more romantic, more available. In doing so, they walk straight into the slaughter, wearing a suit made of sincerity, because nobody ever told them this. The more you become the man she says she wants, the less you become the man her nature actually respects. That's not an attack on her. That's not an attack on you. That's the misalignment we've all been living through. What she says is her social conditioning, her scripts, her manners, her social PR team. But what she wants is ancient. It's nonverbal. It's biological. It doesn't negotiate. It doesn't care about your poetry. It doesn't read your intentions. It smells your power. You think you're the good guy in her life. But if you've ever been dumped right after giving her everything, here's the brutal truth. You gave too much and became nothing. Stopped being the mountain and turned into the mud. That's what Schopenhauer was screaming when he said, men are by nature more capable of objectivity, while women act more as instruments of the species. You weren't rejected because you weren't enough. You were rejected because your over-devotion made you useless to her instincts. Think back to when she first looked at you like you were a god. Not just cute, not just funny, sacred. Her eyes lit up like she just discovered gravity had a name, and it was yours. That look doesn't lie. It's rare. It's raw. And for a brief moment, you felt invincible. Not because of your job title, not your car, but because she saw something ancient in you. Something true that even you didn't fully understand yet. But then, you remember this too. That look faded, and the haunting part. You didn't do anything wrong. In fact, you were probably even more loving, more generous, more emotionally present. But something changed. That glow vanished, placed by politeness, fatigue, emotional apathy. She was trying to convince herself she still felt it, but she didn't, and neither of you could admit it. That S, because the you she admired, the one she worshipped, was in T, the version of you that tried to keep her. It was the man who was already whole before she ever arrived. The man who didn't need her, but invited her. The man with edges, boundaries, direction. It's the man who had purpose outside of being her emotional support animal. Schopenhauer once said, "A man can be himself only so long as he is alone. If he does not love solitude, he will not love freedom." And that right there is what terrifies most modern men. Because deep down, they aren't free. Their emotions are rented out to the mood swings of a woman who says she loves them, but doesn't respect them. And once that respect is gone, your kingdom becomes a daycare. You go from king to caretaker without even realizing it. She says you've changed, but the truth? You softened. And nature doesn't reward softness unless it's backed by strength. Let me say this clearly and say it directly to your spine. You cannot negotiate attraction. You cannot earn desire with loyalty. You cannot beg your way back onto the throne you once sat on effortlessly. The game isn't broken, it's just rigged. You were never taught the rules. You were trained to interpret her words like a legal contract. When she said, "I want a man who communicates," you thought that meant talk more? No, it meant be clearer with your presence. When she said, "I want vulnerability," you thought that meant pouring your feelings out. No, it meant a man who's already tamed his chaos and offers it selectively. Like fire in a freezing world. She's not lying. She just doesn't speak your language. And Schopenhauer, he saw this misalignment long before your favorite dating podcast was even a concept. He didn't write fairy tales. He wrote autopsies of love, of illusion, of male suffering. Let me ask you something that most men will never say out loud. Something that sits in your chest like a stone you've been carrying for years. Why does it feel like women never actually want what they say they want? Why do they beg for a sensitive guy, then chase the one who barely remembers their birthday? Why do they preach equality and partnership, but melt for the guy who takes charge without asking? Why do they say, "I just want a good man," then vanish when that good man shows up with his heart in his hands? Schopenhauer called it a biological paradox. I call it a slow crucifixion. Men are being nailed to expectations that were never rooted in reality. They re-dying, trying to become what she said she wanted, when what she actually responds to is buried in a place even she doesn't fully understand. Now here's the kicker, and it might wreck you or wake you up. She's not lying. She's not playing games. She's not a villain. She simply doesn't know. She doesn't know what she really wants because what she says she wants comes from culture, from social scripts, Hollywood movies, pop psychology posts. But what she responds to, that comes from biology, from nature, from instinct. Nature doesn't ask for your love letters. It doesn't care about your candlelit dinners or thoughtful texts. Nature wants survival, not submission. She's built to want what feels like strength, what feels like power, not necessarily in domination, but in direction. She doesn't crave comfort if it doesn't come wrapped in certainty. She's not checking off a resume of nice guy qualifications. Her nervous system is scanning for something much older, much deeper. So here you are, trying to love her harder, thinking that if you're just more patient, more present, more emotionally available, she'll finally give you back the version of herself that made you feel like a god. You think if you show her how loyal you are, how much you've sacrificed, she'll kneel at the altar of your consistency. But let me tell you something brutal. She doesn't want your love. She wants your gravity. She wants to feel pulled into your orbit, to something bigger than herself. Something she can't quite control, but can't stop coming back to. She wants to feel that she's next to something immovable, something with roots so deep that no storm, especially her emotional ones, can shake it. You show up as soft, predictable, always available, and she doesn't hate you, she just dries up. Because you stopped being the mountain, you became the mud. Schopenhauer didn't romanticize this dynamic, wrote it straight. With women, love easily remains a matter of nature's will, not personal feeling. It's instinct. It's selection. It's filtering. Nature isn't rejecting you to punish you. It's using her lack of interest to sift out the men who don't carry the traits necessary for survival. Not because you're weak. but because your strength got hidden under layers of approval-seeking behavior. You think you're being noble? Bending yourself into the image of the man she said she wanted? But the more you do that, the more you disappear. And here's the twisted part: she watches you do it, not out of cruelty, but out of confusion. She doesn't understand why she's less attracted to you. She knows you're a good man, but her body doesn't light up anymore. And now you're stuck in limbo, trying harder, giving more, being extra romantic, walking into the fire with nothing but sincerity as your armor. But sincerity without sovereignty is just self-sacrifice. You want to be the man she once looked at like you were made of gold dust and danger. The man she felt in her bones, not just her head. But that man wasn't the one who tried to win her. It was the man who didn't need her. Let that hit. She fell in love with your edge knot, your eagerness. She was drawn to your wholeness, your independence, your mission. Not your calendar full of plans to prove your devotion. You didn't lose her because you weren't loving enough. You lost her because your love turned into need. And need is the fastest way to kill attraction. Schopenhauer warned us. A man can be himself only as long as he is alone. And if he does not love solitude, he will not love freedom. That's the core of it. Most men today are not free. Our emotions are chained to the approval of a woman who says she loves them but no longer respects them. And when respect is gone, your kingdom turns into a daycare. You're not the king anymore. You're the caretaker, constantly checking her mood before you speak, constantly trying to make things right when nothing feels wrong except her silence. She says, "You've changed." But what she really means is, "You've softened." Softness without direction, that's not strength. That's surrender. Let me speak directly to the place inside you that still believes you can fix this by being more loving. You cannot negotiate attraction. You cannot earn desire through loyalty. You cannot beg your way back to the throne. You fix this by becoming a mountain again. By becoming a man who doesn't flinch under pressure. A man who doesn't chase affection, but commands it through his energy. When she said, "I want a man who communicates," you heard talk more? But what she really meant was, "Make me feel safe in your clarity." When she said, "I want vulnerability," you thought she meant tears and trauma dumps. But what she really meant was, "Show me your scars after you've mastered them. Show me you've felt pain, but the pain doesn't own you." She's not lying to you. She's just not speaking your language. Schopenhauer understood this misalignment. He wasn't writing love stories. He was writing autopsies, peeling back the surface of male suffering with surgical honesty. He once said, in their hearts, women believe they were created not for man, but for the continuation of the species. That means what you're dealing with isn't a personality issue. It's a program, a biological function. She doesn't want to understand you. She wants to feel you. If she doesn't feel you, she doesn't fight for you. This is where most men break. They start trying to prove their worth. More dates, more texts, more emotional availability. They believe they're losing because they're not enough. But the truth? They're losing because they gave up the very energy that once made them undeniable. When she looked at you like a god, it wasn't because you were romantic. It was because you were rooted. You had direction, purpose, and presence. And somewhere along the way, you traded that for security. But no woman stays attracted to the man she can predict. Because when the mystery dies, the magic goes with it. And without magic, you're not her man, you're just her emotional assistant. So, what do you do now that you've seen the gap between what she says and what she responds to? Between who you became and who you were when she couldn't stop staring at you like you were carved from fire? Do you crawl back? Do you write another message pouring out your heart, hoping she'll remember how good you were to her? Do you double down on kindness, on softness, on proving you're the man she should want? No. You stop chasing ghosts. You stop apologizing for being a man with direction. You stop begging for love, when what you actually need is to reclaim your gravity. Let me say this with no fluff. If you are not the mountain, you are the mudslide. If your presence doesn't calm her storm, it becomes part of it. And eventually, she'll look at you and feel the very thing that repels all attraction. Safety without strength, comfort without command, softness without structure. You weren't born to be her emotional sponge, weren't designed to bend every time her voice changes pitch. You are here to lead, to anchor, though to hold steady not by force, but by being unshakable. But here's the mistake modern men make. They think leadership is dominance. They think being unshakable means being emotionally distant, cold, or cruel. That's not leadership. That's fear dressed as control. Real masculine power isn't loud. It's not reactive. It's the deep stillness that turns chaos into clarity. It's the steady eye in the center of the storm, not the one screaming at the clouds, but the one making decisions while others panic. You become that man by stopping this one habit, seeking validation from women. Let it go, because as long as you are driven by how she feels about you, you are not free. And if you are not free, you are not powerful. You are just a puppet, hoping the smile on her face means you're worthy again. But here's a truth most men can't stomach. The moment you need her to want you, she doesn't. Because neediness is repellent and sovereignty is magnetic. Want to know what she can't walk away from? A man who respects himself so deeply that her confusion doesn't confuse him. A man who doesn't punish her, doesn't chase her, doesn't explain himself 100 times. He simply is. He's not a reaction, he's a standard. She raises to meet him or disappears. In either way, he remains centered. That man has what Schopenhauer called inner freedom. A state where no one, not even the woman he loves, can break his self-possession. He once said, "A man can do what he wills, but he cannot will what he wills." Translation, you cannot choose your attraction, it chooses you. She's not rejecting you, her biology is. And if you internalize that as your worth, you've already lost. Let her walk. Let her wander into the arms of the man who burns hot and fades fast. Let her get lost in the cycle of instability that makes her feel alive for a while until it crashes. You are not here to compete with chaos. You are here to be the place she returns to once she's done worshiping volatility. But only if you've stayed solid. Only if you haven't sold yourself trying to be chosen. Only if you remembered that your power was never in her gaze, it was in your gaze toward your own mission. Because if she is your mission, you've already failed. And here's the paradox that most men never understand. When you stop needing her, she starts noticing you. It's not because you're playing games, but because your energy shifts. You stop orbiting. You become the sun again. And now she's drawn to your warmth, not your willingness. Now she's leaning into your certainty, not your compliance. Now she respects you. A gained attraction without respect is a ghost that never stays. Look, this isn't about becoming cold. It's not about becoming the alpha caricature everyone's mimicking online. It's about remembering who you were before you tried to please the world. You were decisive. You were driven. You were dangerous in the best way. That version of you didn't ask for permission. He didn't need her to feel okay. He was okay because he belonged to himself. You want to win her back? Then stop trying to win her. Win yourself back. The man who walks into the gym not to impress, but to build. The man who reads to sharpen, not to quote Instagram posts. The man who creates, leads, executes not because someone's watching, but because it's in his blood. That man doesn't ask, "How do I make her want me?" He asks, "Am I proud to be me, even if she never comes back?" That's the test. And if you can answer yes, you've already won. Not her, not the game, yourself. Because attraction fades, relationships shift. But the man who is whole, who has built something eternal inside himself, he never loses. Even in heartbreak, he is undefeated, because he remembers love is not a strategy. Masculinity is not a performance, and purpose is not negotiable. When you return to your purpose, everything else aligns. Even her. But by then, you won't need her too. You'll want her, but you won't need her. And that right there is the difference between a boy chasing love and a man who attracts it without trying. Because right now, you might be thinking, okay, I get it. I need to let go. I need to focus on myself. But how? How do I stop thinking about her? How do I stop replaying every moment, every look, every word like it meant something more? You stop by understanding this. It did mean something, but not what you wanted it to. It meant you glimpsed the potential of connection, not its promise. It meant you were open. You were honest. You were available while she was trying to decide between who she is and who she pretends to be. You weren't wrong for loving her. You were wrong for ignoring the silence behind her smile. You were wrong for filling in the blanks of her confusion with the poetry of your own longing. But that's not weakness. That's hope, and there's no shame in it. Still, at some point, hope becomes denial. Denial is the seed of self-betrayal. The moment you started explaining her behavior to your friends instead of confronting it with your standards, the moment you gave her more chances than she ever gave clarity, that's when you started bleeding your masculine energy into the ground. You're not broken, you're just leaking time into what if. Leaking confidence into, maybe she'll change. Leaking power into, if I was just a little more something. Brother, you were never supposed to twist yourself to fit a woman's uncertainty. You were supposed to stand firm and let her reveal whether she was ready for the real you. And if she wasn't, you grieve, you process, but then you build. Because there's only one cure for this kind of ache. Direction. Not distraction. Not rebound. Not numbing out with dopamine. Direction. Get in the gym not to punish yourself, but to reconnect with discipline. Read not to escape, but to reforge your clarity. Work not to impress, but to build your name into something permanent. Because the man who suffers and doesn't build, he becomes bitter. But the man who suffers and builds, he becomes legendary. You know the men we remember? The ones who shaped nations, built empires, created movements? They weren't born with more talent or charm. They just stopped waiting to be understood and started becoming undeniable. Do that. Don't DM her. Don't watch her story. Don't craft the perfect message to show her how much you've changed. Show the mirror. Show you. And here's the quiet truth. If you really loved her, you'll honor that love not by clinging to her shadow, but by becoming the kind of man who could love her without losing himself. That version of you, he doesn't beg, he doesn't chase, doesn't sit in the ashes hoping the fire returns. He rebuilds the fire. Not for her, for the man he's becoming. Maybe one day she'll see that fire again. Maybe she'll realize what she lost, but by then it won't matter, because you'll have gained something infinitely more powerful. Self-respect. And respect is what real love grows from, not confusion. It's not lust, not potential. Respect. So don't lower your standards to meet her comfort. Raise your frequency and let her rise or fall on her own. You're not here to convince anyone of your worth. You're here to embody it so deeply that anyone unsure gets left behind without resentment, without drama, just distance, clean, quiet, final. Because men like you don't burn bridges, you build kingdoms. And the ones who can't handle the climb, they stay in the valley of almost. You're not almost. You're becoming inevitable. So here you are, still breathing, still standing, still holding on to something inside you that refuses to die. No matter how many nights you spent in silence, it's waiting for a message that never came. That something inside you, it's your masculine essence. It's not the performative, surface-level image people throw around, but the raw, unbreakable core that says, I will not be defined by who stays or who leaves. I will define myself. If you've made it this far, you already know. This wasn't about her. Not really. She was the mirror. She was the storm. She was the spark that burned away the version of you that was still waiting for permission to become a man. And now, there's no more waiting. The world doesn't need another passive, polite, half-present man. The world is starving for men who see clearly, lead boldly, and love without losing themselves, and who build systems instead of excuses. Men who create legacy, not leftovers. Men who can walk away not because they stopped caring, but because they started caring about themselves just a little bit more. Brother, you are not a victim of your heartbreak. You are the sculptor of your future, and the chisel is in your hands now. So carve. Carve with pain. Carve with clarity. Carve with purpose. Don't you dare stop, because 5 years from now, when you're standing in a room you've built, living a life you've crafted, surrounded by people who see you, you'll look back and thank the day she didn't choose you, because if she had, you might have never chosen yourself.